You're here.
Okay. Well, do we have a quorum to accept the minutes?
Who's here?
Yeah. Well, you have 3 on the committee. We have 4 on the committee, so we have 3 or 4.
I think. Are we good? Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and start. 3 o'clock, right on the dot. Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order. First of all, we're going to look at the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from the meeting that we had in October? It was so long.
I don't remember it at all. I thought I had made it to a policy committee meeting where it has my name on there.
You were here. I do remember.
Okay, well then I need to be accept the minutes.
Okay, so all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so we're going to do that. And today, mainly, our goal is to do some information. We're not going to take a lot of action today, just a lot of information. As we all know, the state auditor came. We have the report. We've all been given that report. It's available online if anyone wants to go and look at it. After that went public, I sent an email to MSBA, to Kelly, and to Shannon. Basically gave them a copy of the audit, and I had pulled out all the policies that I saw that we needed to address. And she has given me a bit of information on each one of those, so we'll kind of go through those as we go through. We thought we would just take off a little chunk today, and we were sort of hoping that, and Debbie, did it come in the mail today, from the MSBA? They were supposed to be sending us a proposal for, okay, so maybe we'll have to look at that on Friday. Hopefully they'll come by Friday, Finance Committee meeting, and we'll talk about that proposal from them moving forward. So we will start with GCB, Certified and Classified Staff Contracts and Compensation Plans. Debbie, did you pull those by any chance or not? Yes. Okay. So this is one that the auditor said that we, I should have pulled out my notes from him, that we need to address. And basically what Kelly is advising is that we have policies regarding relating to the staffing, hiring, suspension, non-renewal, termination of both professional and support, the classified staff. We do not have a separate policy for contracts. Professional staff are a part of these policies as they are required by law. We do not require that the district contract with any employee who is not entitled to a contract by law. So I think that was one thing that they brought up. We were talking about certified, non-certified, who had a contract, who didn't have a contract. So that's sort of their recommendation. Again, this is just information today.
So they're recommending that we consider having a policy for people who are not certified staff?
She says we do not recommend that the district contract with any employee who is not entitled to a contract by law.
Oh.
So that's their recommendation. And again, this is for information today. And I think the plan moving forward is that once we are on their plan for the next year of going through all of our policies, they know which ones of these are the most critical that we address first. Mm-hmm. And so I think as we get that approved and we get on that road with them, mm-hmm. then we look much, much deeper. So I'm just asking everyone to start looking at these specific ones that we have brought to your attention today. So, Jake, do you want to?
Okay, Kim.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, I insist.
So Chris has the laryngitis, so
Yes.
listen carefully.
I had that before.
So on this policy, on the second page, where it says release from contract,
Mm-hmm.
it says in the second paragraph that that will be considered with a $2,000 penalty. Mm-hmm. I believe on our contract there's a $2,000 penalty and a $4,000 penalty.
That's right.
But a
When it's closer.
$4,000 penalty isn't listed in our policy. So that concerns me if we've charged anyone $1,000.
Is that in a procedure somewhere?
I would have to go and look. I don't know.
So for next time when we come back, Jake can let us know.
And I would venture to say, I don't know this for sure, but I would venture to say that MSBA's policy that they'll be recommending for us won't have such clauses in there, but I could be wrong. We'll see.
You don't think they'll have either clause? Any?
I doubt, unless it's one of those blank spaces where they leave that up to the district, the local, and then we could decide if we want the 2,000 or 4,000. So. But let me make sure I've got your concern that the teacher contracts state 2,000 or 4,000 depending on the time, right?
Well, I think after August 1st.
After August 1st is 4,000.
Right.
Okay.
So if it's so close to the school year, they
Yeah.
think it's a higher penalty.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
It's
I
just
think
it wasn't
that-
in the policy, so that's the
Okay.
only thing. But if
But I'm
it's-
thinking it's in the procedure, because I remember us having this conversation before, and that was the explanation that we had, that it was after that time frame, that it's harder to get a qualified person in that position.
After
So
August,
there's a
yeah.
stiffer penalty. But I remember having that conversation at some point.
I think I
But yeah.
recall that also, and it may have been last fall when we were going
I
through
think so.
policies.
I think so. So,
And
Anyway,
that's for
I'll definitely check on
non-emergency release. That's
Yeah.
not for people who have some kind of weird thing that
Yes,
happens.
yes.
yeah.
That just,
They change
somebody
their
gets a
minds.
job offer,
Right.
you know, after August 1st and, you know, school starting August 18th or whatever it is, and then we're out, music teacher or whatever it may be, so. But I'll see if that piece is in there to align with our contracts.
And I know that not every policy has a procedure, and I don't think that every policy has to have a procedure, but I think moving forward that we want to make sure that all of the verbiage is consistent in policy and procedure so that we are clear all the way through. So is there anything else on that one that anybody kind of jumped out at them that we want to question before our next meeting?
The only thing that the only other point that I would say that, and as we go through this, I'd like to do this for all committee meetings, is reference back to the state audit report and the recommendations that were made. That way we can kind of keep everybody online where we're coming from. And so this policy revision and review lies under State Audit Recommendation 1.1 and 1.2. And so we're revising it, we're looking at it, potential if we need to make any changes, and our goal is to align it with MSBA policies.
Yes. So, and like I said, once we kind of get them, that finalized with them, then we will all be able to move forward, and it'll be nice to know that they look at all of our information and they make sure that everything is consistent throughout, so that we don't have as much gray areas. So that kind of helps us moving forward. So is there anything else? Between now and next month, or next meeting, whatever, if you guys have any other concerns, let us know so that we can address that. So the next one is GCBA. Or Bo, did you have something to say?
Well, this is the board policy committee, so this isn't probably the appropriate committee to chat with. But I was curious, because I haven't been to every meeting for a while, how much we've discussed the actual language in the teacher contract itself and possible revisions before next year. I just happen to know that we were using teacher contracts for administrators. Is that appropriate? Do we need to look at the language in the contract itself? Obviously we do, because it's not matching board policy. And if we're going to make changes to that teacher contract, we need to do that very soon. And I do think that I just know that our own legal counsel hadn't looked at our teacher contract maybe ever. And so where is the board in reviewing the actual language of the teacher contract itself?
I can speak to one of those. I talked to Steve Briggs today, because the language on the administrator contract is the same as a teacher contract, which is an issue. And so I have sent that language and some model language used by other school districts to Mr. Briggs. Mr. Briggs is working with MSBA on model administrative language, and I plan to have that language for the board to adopt on Friday for the personnel committee. So the admin language, yes, change. Haven't done anything with the teacher language.
Okay.
Is there something with the teacher language?
I would defer to Mr. Briggs on
Yeah.
whether or not he likes it or not.
Okay.
Other than it's not matching board policy, I think we need to evaluate that.
The numbers.
Yeah. And perhaps we just need to make the revision of the board policy to match the contract if we like the way the contract reads.
Can you send us one of those?
Contract?
A contract?
A blank one? Yeah.
Just so that we,
And I would
I'll get you a copy.
We won't have Brett sign it, we promise.
No, I can't put that electronic stamp on there.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
And I would just also, if we talk about contracts, take the opportunity to talk about my own personal situation here. I don't know if CFOs are required by law to have a contract, but there's required by law an industry standard, and it is absolutely industry standard for the chief financial officer of large school districts to have a contract. Not only is it not as an industry standard for school districts, but it's industry standard in general for C-level executives to have a contract. So I would respectfully ask the board members formally in public to consider giving myself a contract. I am the only administrator now not on a contract. And I think obviously in my position, having to make difficult decisions and recommendations to the board that may not be well received by those in and outside the district, I would respectfully ask that you consider a contract for my role.
I think we'll look at that. Okay, are we ready for the next one?
I think so.
Okay. GCBA staff salary schedules. And that one, we have policies for professional staff. We have some samples from other districts just for support staff. We do not include the actual schedule in the policy. I think what clarify for the state auditor was, I think, basically looking at that there have been numerous changes, swings in salary contracts. I think that they were thinking that we needed a little more consistent. Was that my interpretation?
Well,
correct,
I think
or?
just making sure that if anything varies, if you'll read our policy, they expect you to follow the salary schedules, obviously. And if there's anything that varies from that, it'd be brought directly to the board for approval. Our policy does allow that, but it does require board approval. So if you'll read our policy, I think that's part of what they were saying, but also make sure that if there's any of those variances, that it goes directly to the board for approval.
And so in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't have salary schedules for several, like parents as teachers, and what were some of the other ones we didn't have?
Hilliard.
Hilliard's.
But we've corrected that already.
Yes, those are in your salary booklet that we will be looking at later today.
Okay. All right. Did anybody else have any other questions about that one?
No, but I think that's a big one to address, because that's kind of what got us in this place. Is there may have been salary schedules, but the board didn't know about them and didn't approve them. So.
In 13-14, whenever the audit was done.
Right.
Yeah. Because if you go back, starting in May and June, when everything come up, the board has for this current for 14-15 school year, every schedule, and there's a lot of them. Every schedule within the booklet has been brought to the board, and any kind of additional payment that would be considered from the state auditor standpoint, a stipend, has continually been brought back to the board. That's your
Right, and there
additional
needs to
pay
be
rate.
documentation for why something
Yes.
would be
Yes.
there and stuff, right?
So I think some of this we had already started to correct before it even came out in the audit.
Right.
Because we asked questions, so I think a lot of that came out. So again, take a look at it. If there's anything in there that you see that you feel like we need to look at, just let us know. And again, I will be working further with Kelly.
And that one, like she said, she does have the professional staff. She does have a professional staff policy that I think we should strongly consider, especially if it deviates from our current policy too much. A lot of our policies you'll find do have, how should I say this, an MSBA background, but they've been deviated or brought to us from a variety of ways. And Debbie, she'll know more history on that, but if you'll see, the language isn't just totally foreign from MSBA's language. It's a lot of them's does fall in line.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've done a lot of tweaking over the years. And I think that that's why I feel so confident moving forward, is to know that we will be able to have open dialogue with MSBA, and we can air our thoughts, and then they can customize any of the policies and how we see fit, because they're our policies. So ultimately, it comes down to us. But I think having their guidance makes me feel a lot more comfortable moving forward, because, you know, they know more about this than I do. So I really
You brought this one, but you didn't bring the extra duty schedule or policy. Is that not something?
that was not listed.
Okay.
It wasn't listed, but it's probably a good idea to go over
We
it.
can always add.
No.
Or at least I didn't pick it out. I don't know if I just may have overlooked
That's
it.
okay.
I mean, that can be another one. But we didn't want to overwhelm because my list was rather long. And this being the first one we've had since October, we didn't want to have a meltdown, and I don't want to bring too much to the plate yet until we have our contract signed with MSBA, so that we know that we have their support and backing, because they're going to give us an editor for the year, and they said this will be a year-long process. It might be a little longer than that to be able to get through everything.
This is being streamed, right?
Mhm.
So the MSBA, for people who don't know, is the Missouri School Boards Association. Because we haven't said, we just keep saying MSBA.
Yes.
So,
So, anything else on that one? Okay, next one is DA, fiscal responsibility. Let's see, what did she say up here? Actually, I had another note in there, but
DA was a specific response that has been included in our recommendation, or from the state auditor's recommendation in regards to item 8.1 recommendation, actually 8.2, I'm sorry, from refrain from expending district funds on items that do not clearly benefit the district, ensure expenditures are coded to proper accounts, and process invoices in a timely manner. And so part of the purpose of looking at DA fiscal responsibility is so we make sure that everybody's aware of policy DA and know what it says to ensure that district funds are spent that clearly benefit the district.
yeah, and I think that one of the things that they kind of caught us on was that a few of the invoices hadn't been turned into the business office in the appropriate amount of time, and there ended up being and we don't want to have any of that if we're moving forward. So, and I think as a board, fiscal responsibility is a big one for us. So I think we all need to really take a look at that one.
The big points on that policy is it outlines the audit committee, which is the finance committee, which meets on a monthly basis, as everybody here knows, and then also outlines prohibited activity with it.
And we had already actually, since now we're getting the checks.
Yes.
We get the list of the checks every single month about all the checks that have been written, and we're also being able to check the credit card statements. So that was for transparency's sake. I think that we actually already started working on that before the auditor's report. So anything else on that one? I'm trying to make sure we're on time. Okay. Then, Jake, I'm going to let you talk about the disaster recovery plan. This is not a policy, but it was mentioned that in the event that anything catastrophic would happen, that the auditor's office did not feel that we had an appropriate plan in place to be able to recover and recoup all of the information, the data that we have. So
this was item 14 from the state audit report in computer controls, and recommendation 14.2 and 14.3. 14.2 states that ensure backup data is tested on a regular and predefined basis. And so what the district has said, Tim McKay and his staff began working on this immediately once it was identified as a need. And so in November of 2014, the district developed a plan for safeguarding backup data and testing it in the disaster recovery plan. This information can be found on page 17 of the technology disaster recovery plan, which is Tim's about to present to you. And then also 14.3, develop a comprehensive disaster recovery plan and periodically test and evaluate the plan. Part of our response was the district developed a technology disaster recovery plan in November 2014. The plan was developed by the Director of Technology and will be tested for the first time in March of 2015. And so I'll let him talk more about that. But also one thing that we wanted to do to make sure that we were putting forth a good faith effort was bring this to the board for presentation. We felt like if it was identified by the state auditor as a need, then we want to make sure that we're presenting it to the board as fulfilling. Here's the product, here's the process that we've been through to fulfill this need. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Tim McKay.
Okay. Yes, on page 17 was kind of an overview on what we use in the district as far as a solution, as far as what we use to back up all of our servers. And a redundancy plan, we have a copy at the TMC, and then we have another copy at Central High School in the dungeon, I call it. Since it's covered, by many walls and it's very deep. A copy is placed in that location, and then we also have copies placed in the cloud also. So we actually have 3 redundancies just in case of a disaster. As far as periodically testing our backups and stuff, usually once a week we get a call, hey, restore this file. And that's probably a better test than we can even do on a quarterly or a monthly basis or whatever. So we know that that's actually happening. And then in March of this, probably later in the month, what we're going to do is we're going to create a server in the cloud with this Dell Aperture application that gives us an opportunity to take what they call a virtual server, and we can throw it up in the cloud and then bring it online and just check the data and make sure everything's there. So that's kind of our testing purposes. We felt that was more economically feasible, because if not, we would have to go out and purchase network gear, server gear, and all that stuff, and then create a whole new different network, and that just gets very complicated. So we felt that was the best thing to do, and we've kind of bounced some of these ideas off of the local backup Echo Cloud solution with Jeff Pendleton and those guys. So, and that's kind of what they do in a sense, to be honest with you, for other clients. So we kind of followed that model when we did that. But this is a listing of all of the primary servers that we back up in.
Is that at the end of the
Page 17.
Yeah, page 17. It's the front and the back. And then we've listed, page 19 is some of our critical vendors that we would have to deal in case of a disaster. Suddenlink is our internet provider as far as the fiber is concerned. And then Dell is what we primarily use for all of our networking, plus the backup solution is Dell. And then Yellow Dog is our network provider as far as our network gear, our switches and stuff like that we would need in case, in a worst case scenario that the TMC would be wiped out or whatever. We'd have to completely relocate, rebuild somewhere. And then SunGuard is who we use for our e-finance application.
So that backs up all of the business office?
All of the business office, yeah, anything that has to do with the financial data and within that respect.
Is that rolling? I mean, sorry, does it back up all the time? Just anytime you put something in, it backs it up?
We do a backup at the end in the evening on all the servers, and we don't do that for every server just because the amount of data would be enormous. The primary ones would be Power School, e-finance. Those are backed up every night. And then again, like I said, those 2 particular servers are also thrown in the cloud for a triple. Those are really the core of what we really need to be able to respond to in case we have a disaster. The rest of the stuff.
So what if something happened in the middle of the day before you got to back up again?
We would have to go, we may be a couple hours behind or whatever. It's very costly to do just in time. If you wanted to back up every 5 minutes or every 30 minutes, it would get very costly. It is definitely doable. And I can sure bring the numbers to the board if that's a necessity.
I just know that I lost all of my contacts last week on my phone, and I was just like freaking out. And that's
just one day worth of the stuff can usually be recovered.
Yeah.
Especially same day.
Yeah, I start to worry about those things when computers at home start doing funky things, and I worry about losing years and years of work.
And we do, I'll rebut on that, but we do for Power School, that is backed up twice during the day, and those would be put up there. E-Finance, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that they do an hourly backup, I believe, of the database, if I'm not mistaken, how they set that up for us.
We should find out.
Yeah, I'd have to double check on that.
Yeah, let's find out.
Because when we, it's backed up and it's put on the server, but then we back up the server. So I'd have to, it's kind of like a copy of the database is what's put out there.
So
for
what
us.
happens is when you back it up, and there's already, say, it's finance files, you've got one that's already out there in the cloud. When you back up the current file, then it just replaces.
No, we keep several copies. So, and then it gets, I mean, we keep like 2 weeks of copies, and then it rolls over.
Oh, so you've got, okay, 2 weeks back up.
Does that make sense?
It doesn't just add the new?
Pardon me?
It doesn't just add the new?
Yeah, because I just anticipated that.
I mean, let's say if we wanted to go back
That would take
to
forever.
Thursday of last week, we could pull that back up
Oh, okay.
and go back to there.
Where it was at Thursday last week.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
But like I said, we only keep 2 weeks. If we tried to keep even more than that, it would be
Yeah.
very.
Well,
very
see, I didn't
costly
even
for
think that you were
us.
doing that. I just thought that you were just, when you backed it up, then it just replaced
Yeah,
what was there.
No, it doesn't overwrite what's there. It keeps, because we back up a folder that's got multiple copies in it, I guess I should say.
Oh, okay.
So, and similar with Power School. Like the local copy may even have more copies for Power School than what's in the cloud. So, and you know, if the disaster would hit the TMC, we still could go to over to Central and pull what's over there.
So you could get on it in any one of our buildings and be able to pull back up.
Yes,
And
everything as far as server-wise, everything is stored at the TMC. We don't have any servers at any of the other buildings except
Okay.
for Central. The more reason why we chose Central was because of the depth of where we could put it, and it was surrounded by concrete. So it's a bunker, basically.
It
what
is.
It is.
It literally
So,
is.
and we did that. I did that when I was in the network department. So it's been sitting over there for, I don't know, 4 years maybe. We've been doing that, and we've been backing up to the cloud for probably 4 years also. We were using something different at the time, and we weren't doing it through Mornet at the time. They offered a cloud solution for us. It got kind of expensive, so that's why we went to this Aperture to where we could have some more manageability, and it was a lot cheaper. And you use some of Microsoft's cloud services, and for them it's pennies on the dollar versus Mornet.
Yeah, and I guess I always worry about like the situation that happened with Joplin several years ago. I mean, you think of that and you just think of how, and their superintendent came and talked to the PTA convention that we had last year. And he talked about the devastation. And I mean, that just really,
I really wouldn't want to go through that.
no, it was horrible. And, you know, you start thinking about that. Like I say, I just worry about my little files at home. But I mean, when you start thinking about district-wide, the magnitude. And I remember him saying he went in and just, you know, they didn't really have a clear plan in the beginning. And it was, you know, so I'm really glad that we're addressing this so that.
Yeah, we really never had anything in black and white. I mean, we were prepared for certain things, but as far as functionality and like the calling tree and the context, that was not in black and white, where if Jake had to make the call, he wouldn't know who to call, now he can, or, you know, I know who to call.
So let me be devil's advocate in the calling tree. What if somebody's not available and there's a gap?
Which tree are you talking
The
about?
calling tree? Can you say that there was a calling tree?
There's one
where-
listed in here.
Where you,
Yeah, on
such and such would call such and such, and then such and such would da-da-da-da-da.
yeah,
Well, I think we would just
We're
have to
pretty-
make a
yeah.
decision on the go there on what to do.
Okay, all right.
I know that first, she's our policy person, and attention is in the detail, and I know that bothers you, but
It does. Well, I just remember having the calling tree at Hyde, and if somebody didn't answer their phone, then who called everybody else? How did you know? Of course, we've kind of moved past that now, but I think this is
Well, there
great.
should be a master list somewhere, right?
And our calling
That's what
tree
he
is
has
pretty
there.
short because I only have three employees. in that department, so.
Doesn't need a tree much for that.
Well, I'm really glad to see this, honestly.
The branch.
Because these are kind of things that I do worry about. I don't always vocalize them, but I do. I think that we have to be prepared, and so I think it's a really good thing. Because after listening to him, like I said, he was very emotional. He was very emotional, and even it was years after it had happened, but to relive that every time he talked about it, it was just, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. But I just, I think of it logistically.
And the state auditor mentioned, and Bob I think it was actually Bob, wherever they was going through this, obviously this isn't something that they've always audited. It's a process. It was
just
something
came from the Joplin.
Came in from the Joplin disaster.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So,
Well, it's certainly a good idea.
so is there anything else that you wanted to say about it?
No, unless anybody has any questions?
Well, you could go on.
If you, I don't know if anybody noticed, but we did make some changes based on some decisions that had happened last week, and so just updated it, just names. So.
Yeah.
And just be aware that it's still a work in process.
It's
In
always a
progress.
work in progress.
It'll always be.
There'll always be changes,
Yes.
especially after we do the test in the end of March. I'm sure we'll have to tweak something.
And doing that test, it'll pop up little areas that need to be addressed, I'm assuming.
So do you think the board would like to see this annually?
Sure.
So yes. Absolutely. When do you think in the year would be the best time? Because this is the beginning of the
When's
year thing?
20th?
Is this the end of the year thing?
I would say sometime, since we're doing it in March, let's just make plans to do it again in March next
Every
year.
March.
Tim, does that work for you? Is this a good time of year?
Uh,
I would defer to
Not
Tim
testing.
on this. We're in this time of year. We're scrambling to put together our
yeah,
budget
we're
for next
scrambling
year.
for budget and RFPs and bids and
Do you think
getting ready
the
to
So I'm hearing
Is
from
it
you this
fall
isn't a good
Yeah.
time of year.
I'll be honest, fall would probably be better because also we only do our work, and don't take this out of context, but the busiest time for us is summer, of course, and that's when we would be doing any overhauls of infrastructure or servers or whatever.
So if
We
anything
can't do that.
changed, fall
Yeah,
would be
we-
the best time
We
to
can't
say.
take the school down in the middle of the day and
Right.
change out a bunch of switches or the network,
Right.
so.
So you think like November?
Yeah.
Would that be a good goal?
Probably.
Yep. We'll
Is
see
there
it again in
anything
November.
Yeah.
Debbie?
So
Thank
you're
you.
working on that for November, sir?
That's when it first came about, so.
Very good.
The other piece there that I'd like to note with this is that the periodic password change as recommended, and so that's a pretty big task. That it's not a part of the disaster recovery plan, is it?
It is not.
Okay, it's a pretty big task, and so what we asked them is, the key identified personnel for periodic password change, and so it's not necessarily the implementing the change. It's the calls that would be flooded to Tim's office as passwords were changed.
I can't
You know
remember
I mean?
what my
Yes.
password was.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, we questioned the auditors, and of course, we didn't get a good response, but, I mean, we have certain, as far as different levels of logins and different levels of security, and for Power School, for instance, if you do not utilize it within a certain amount of time, it automatically logs you out, so you have
Right.
to re-log in again. That password is different than maybe your Active Directory password. Same way with eFinance, it goes inactive after a certain amount of time if you're not using it. So those are normally implemented within the application. It's kind of hard to get an answer from the auditor as far as, okay, are you looking at the Active Directory or are you looking at a particular application? Because it's already built in the application. We normally, we change that, and that's usually based upon whoever's kind of managed that application. Like for Power School would be Tim Ellis, and that was, kind of feedback from also the teachers is, I don't
Maybe
want
they
to
just want us to think about how often we want to do that and for who do we want it to be.
Yeah.
Where before we hadn't really thought about it. And they're like, you come up with what you want to do, but you need to think about that.
Right.
There might be some that you need that for.
And I understand that, but I don't want us to get into a situation like as the state PTA treasurer, I log into our credit card company, and every so many days, you have to change the password. And
Well, I think
if
that's
I
what they
don't,
wanted us to
if
do.
I don't then tell the president, then she tries to log in, and then she's not getting that information because I forgot to send her the new password. It's, yeah. I don't want to get to there. 'Cause
That could be a pain.
Well, and like I said, the number of calls that he would get and his department would get,
You would be inundated.
yes.
You'd be surprised how many calls we get after Christmas break.
Yeah.
Seriously. Well,
That's why you write it down somewhere.
But you're not supposed to do that.
I know, but
In
Anyway,
code.
but,
Write it in code.
You type it.
Backwards with numbers instead of letters.
that's good.
Yes.
Anyway, those
We
three
just gave
items.
everybody secrets.
Oh, shoot.
now everybody knows, Kathy.
My password is password. It's
So-
not.
Those three items complete item 14 as far as what the state auditor recommended in us fulfilling. And so we can, we can put a check by item 14, computer controls and disaster recovery. So,
And then you will be keeping
yes,
this
it will
up
be.
to date
It will be updated on the website tomorrow.
on the website. Thank you
Okay.
very much. So we'll see you in November.
Yep, all right.
Now I just have to remember that.
Thank you, Tim.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anything else?
We had, just number 4, and so you'll notice, and then if the board wants to do this differently, please, by all means, let me know if we're doing it too much, because I've asked Debbie to put SAO audit report, an update on every committee meeting and then board meeting. That way we can continuously go back to this and say, okay, we've talked about the salary schedule policies, we've computer controls, we've gone over those, we've checked them over, and then that way we're not just keeping each other updated, we're keeping our public updated also, because
That's important.
it is important. And so on our next committee our next committee, we'll go over what in the state audit has to do with curriculum instruction, and so we'll talk about that, and then we'll go over same thing for personnel and finance. And so just be able to continually keep that part of our conversation on a monthly basis until we feel like we fulfilled what has needed to be fulfilled.
That's great. I like it.
All right. Does anybody have anything else that they want to bring? Next year or next month, it'll be, we'll
Be a lot
revisit
heavier.
these.
We'll do them in pieces, as you
Yeah,
said.
I mean, that's all we can do because, we looked at the list and honestly, that would have been overwhelming just to bring the whole list. So we're just going to try to chunk it out. And again, I look forward to once we're in that other, have that moving forward. And that way we can be assured that what we want in those policies are in there, but yet we're making sure that all statutes and all laws are covered in everything that we do. So,
That's great. Gets us to know the policies better, too.
yes. So I think it's good for all
There's-
of us.
I don't think
to
people
look.
know. Lori has a copy. It's like this thick, isn't it? Of all the policies she got when she became policy chairman.
Thank you, Debbie.
It was enormous. There's so many.
There's so
It's
many.
hard to, just know them all. So it's helpful to have a meeting where we go over something that's come up or that's important. I like that.
I think it's important that that's why all of us need to be at all of the committee meetings, is because
You miss.
you miss
stuff,
things,
yeah.
and you can't really make an educated decision unless you're here and listening to the discussion. So I think it's important. So, Bo, did you?
Yeah, can we bring to the board next month revisions to when we hold actual board meetings?
Oh, the board meetings.
Oh, yes, we talked about that. Yeah.
Would you like us to bring 2 different options for the group to vote on? I mean, all we're doing is changing it from either the first week or the second week, either to the third or fourth.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like a couple different options?
And the pluses and minuses?
Sure.
Okay.
And then, just give justification on what you think is good and better
And for the
about.
time being, talk to me a little bit about Martin's schedule restraints.
I believe that he leaves on Mondays and is back on Thursdays.
typically.
So he's gone Tuesday, Wednesday?
Right,
He's
every-
saying this week his schedule has changed a lot, so maybe you better ask him.
Okay. That's what it was. I know Mondays are awful for me. I mean, because the first day of the week, I don't know for anybody else, but Mondays are always just like slammed. But I think that I personally like going to the third Monday because I think that once you get too far away from previous information, then you start to lose some things in translation a little bit. I think moving it to the third week, that gives you an extra week. That gives us time to get that information in our hands before we come into committee meetings.
So committees would be the second week of the month.
Yeah.
Board meeting the third Monday.
Because that first week, then
I thought we
you
wanted,
could-
I thought we wanted more time before the board meeting though.
Because personnel and finance, we get
It
that
had been on
information.
Friday before.
Oh, but what I'm hoping is that we have the information in our hands before committee meetings, not 24 hours, 48 hours, but maybe the week before. So
Does our
yours,
board policy comment on how the gap between committee meetings and board meetings?
I don't think it's-
It's silent. Well, I mean, the more
think it's
time for
just-
finance, the better, since we have, month-end cutoff, and then we're on that short deadline of getting
I seem to remember you saying that if there's too much time between the finance committee and the board meeting, things change.
That's more of an issue, I think, from a personnel standpoint.
Oh,
than it is
okay.
finance. Ours won't change, really. Our month-end numbers won't change.
Okay.
More time, the better for us. And I know you had mentioned before that you didn't like having finance committee on Friday followed right by a board meeting on Monday, Chris. My only question for you is, but if I can keep that set up, but promise you I'll have you the finance committee meeting information 4 or 5 days in advance, does that make you happy?
Yes.
Okay.
Or even we could have
Is it-
finance on Monday instead of Friday
Well-
if it worked out for Martin.
But that doesn't, if we do finance on Monday, that doesn't give me much time.
Of the
still.
second week?
Well, it gives me an extra day. All that does is give me an extra day.
Weekend.
Because
That's
we're a
true.
Friday on week 1, and so
That's true.
I would push, that doesn't do me any good at all.
We're not very informed as board members if we don't get the information until the day before.
Yeah.
Come
Right.
here, so.
Yeah, because when, I look through religiously all of the checks, I look through all of the credit card statements, so that way that if there's questions, and I've asked questions before, because if I'm thinking that and I'm wondering, well, what's that for? I know that somebody else looking online in the community is looking at that, and they don't have any idea what it's for either. So if we can clear up some of those and people understand what it is, then I think that takes away some issues. But I guess the way that I was looking at it was first week would be the week that you would get the work done. And on some of the committees, I think that we would be able to get out information that week for maybe the finance, maybe. if you
Yeah,
look at
personnel could be the first part of the month if that's a problem for them. But although that still feels like an arbitrary date from personnel. I mean, you're hiring and firing, I'm assuming, all the time. So I feel like, there shouldn't be too many concerns from a hiring and firing standpoint, unless someone speak up and correct me if I'm wrong. But I would think the way we hire and fire, there's no timeline. But one thing is for sure, finance committee numbers, month-end financials are always the last day of the month. And so that's why I'm pushing to have everything moved back from my perspective.
Makes sense.
But then another thing, the only thing that's problematic if we space out personnel and finance, sometimes those things run hand in hand as well.
They correlate, yeah.
And so I'd like to keep those two close to each other because sometimes we need to do joint meetings. If somebody needs to speak up, if there's an issue it seems like an arbitrary date from personnel. So I don't see why it would be problematic to move it back. But
I don't.
we'll bring some revisions. We'll find out what Martin's schedule looks like moving forward. And maybe we'll have a couple different options for the board to consider.
We're
next
starting,
month.
well, yeah.
We're starting the next school year,
The
and we'll
next
bring
school
those
year.
revisions next month.
I don't think that we should make any changes for this school year since
Right.
we're already in March.
Yes.
I just think this would be, if we decide to
Fiscal year,
change,
yeah.
that it would be for the new fiscal year moving forward.
And the issue for me really is having that information ahead of time, so when we come to the committee meeting. So it'll be on the board members to actually read that stuff.
Mhm.
So when we come, and your committee probably has the most to analyze.
Right. Yeah.
But it's a lot. And when you're getting it 24 hours before the meeting, that's not adequate time to be able to really absorb all of it. So,
Sure.
Or sometimes you just aren't available
yeah.
that instant to sit down and look at it, and having an extra day or two, you'll find time to be able to get through it all.
Yeah, because last month we had Founder's Day the night before the meetings, and I didn't get home until late, and so the next morning I was up early looking at everything and didn't quite.
Well, I think everybody will be happier by moving finance back, because it gives us more time to prepare it, and then more time, and then I can send it to you guys early, and give you guys more time to review it.
Yeah, because I know when Kathy and I went and we did our first training, these other board members were talking about, oh, the district sends us this packet every week, and we're like, what's in that packet? No one would tell us what was in the packet, but I'm assuming that
Well,
they
they
were
said
getting,
they were vague, like, well, you know everything. You know?
we're like,
If
we
you
don't know
took
what
everything
is.
that we put on
Right, and these little
electronic
things, yeah.
school board for all 4 committee meetings, and then just kind of jammed it into one, and including financials and all that, that would be
Yeah, and they got that delivered to their homes every week.
That's how the Board of Governors at the college does it too. They get theirs.
And it's nice, because that way you have the time, because everybody's schedule is different, and you, when you have the time, can go through and be, very thorough in it. But I don't know, I just feel like so many things have been rushed, and you just can't make good decisions when you're rushed. So I think that's a good thing. Anything else? So Bo, well, you guys can work on that, and then that way give us a couple of options and pros and cons.
So you want us to take a look at these policies, and if we have something we want to do different.
Yes.
Is anything going to happen with these policies at the board meeting?
No. No, this is just for information. And then as soon as we get on our maintenance package, then we will start working with that editor. And
Great. Will they be coming to meetings?
I am going to ask that they come and possibly do a special meeting. Do you think they would do that, Jake?
I would say so.
I think with the scope of the work here.
Well, and also, I mean,
to
we're
talk to all of
contracting
us.
them
that-
There's a lot to look at.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask that of them after we sign on the dotted line. So that's kind of where I am with that. Anything else? Okay, all right.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Yay.